Hi, hello. It is a very chill Sunday over here. I've got my little iced coffee because we have beautiful weather and it's still appropriate to even be drinking iced coffee. And I always have the urge to dig my grubby fingers into my makeup when I have a little bit of time. So I figured why not turn my urge into a little video that hopefully will be enjoyable to you. So today the idea is that I'm going to basically swatch all of my powder blushes. I don't think I'm going to do the cream blushes today. Maybe we can leave that for another small video later on. But today I'm just going to swatch my powder blushes and we are going to just, swatch through all of them, talk about the different formulas, the different finishes, the different colors, a little bit about my color preferences, and you will definitely see that I have a certain color family that I prefer when it comes to my blushes, and that's certainly not because I'm super self-aware and I off the bat knew which blush colors would work for me. No, that's absolutely not the case. It has taken me quite a few years to find out what kind of colors really work against my skin tone. Maybe something I want to mention starting off this video, I think I have a rather decent blush collection. I don't think I have too many, I don't have too few either, and I feel like blush is one of those products when I don't mind too much to have a lot of, because I do rotate through them daily. I never really get hung up on a specific blush or a specific color. I have my preferences when it comes to the different seasons, and obviously when I get something new I'm a little bit more excited about it, so I use it more often. But overall I would say that I rotate through my blushes pretty well, just as much as I rotate through my bronzers and my highlighters. I do, however, out of these three categories, have the most in terms of numbers when it comes to blush. And with that said, let's start swatching some blushes. So what I've taken out here are sort of my one-offs and my palettes. So we're first going to swatch those, and then we're going to go towards the brands where I have multiple colors from and just go brand by brand. Let's start off with the single one-off colors, and I'm going to start off with this blush that you have actually seen on my channel quite a few times in the past couple of days, because it is the newest blush to my collection. This is the Chanel Equinox blush in the shade 797. This is a limited edition blush that was released for the fall of 2023, and honestly with this color and the beautiful, embossing with the little autumn leaves on it, I don't know what says autumn better than this color. And of course the beautiful intertwined C's here, the Chanel logo. But I mostly am really fond of the color of this because it is essentially my most preferred color when it comes to blush, which is this beautiful orangey pumpkiny color, which is not too bright, it is not too pink, it's certainly not a coral. I was actually afraid that because this is called beige coral, it's going to be a coral shade, but it really isn't a coral shade, and I have actually a coral shade within this collection of blushes here. I'm going to swatch that out in a second so that you can clearly see how much more orange and not as vibrant it is compared to a coral, and how much less pink there is in here. In terms of formula, this is a beautiful lightweight matte. It doesn't really have any sort of sheen to it, none that I have noticed, but while it is a matte formula, it applies very naturally. It's very, it looks very skin-like. Okay, then let's talk about an oldie but a goodie. This is one of the skin glazing shades from Nabla. These were released in 2018, if my memory serves me right, and this is the shade Truth, which I would describe as your classic peachy pink gold. The formula on these remains impeccable. It is a shame that Nabla didn't really play up on this formula and create more shades and expand on it, because these are flawless. They look absolutely gorgeous on the skin. Let me zoom you in so that you can see it. I hope it's not getting lost on camera, but this has very much a sheen on it. This is the kind of formula that will definitely give you a little bit of glow, so it almost serves as a blush highlighter hybrid. This formula remains one of my favorite. It is a baked formula, FYI, and I'm pretty sure these haven't been discontinued. They're still around and I would highly recommend them. Another blush that is in a baked formula that I really enjoy is this very old MAC limited edition collection from, I want to say, 2016, from the Nutcracker collection. This is a duo which contains a blush and a highlighter. They're both in the baked formula. This is the, if I'm not mistaken, these are the extra dimension ones. Yeah, these are the extra dimension skin finish formulas. The highlighter is a very popular color. If I'm not mistaken, this is the shade Whisper of Guilt, and it is a really beautiful golden champagne. But what I'm going to swatch for you today really is this beautiful sort of like bronzy brownie terracotta blush, which is called, I can never remember the name of this blush because I don't really care. It's called Pleasure Model. Unfortunately, I don't think this blush has ever been re-promoted as a single or anything, but everything about it is just so beautiful. It's the baked formula, so it definitely has a bit of a sheen to it, but what I really appreciate is like how unique this color is. It is this beautiful like nudie brownie, a little bit bronzy color. It doesn't quite have the sheen that the Nabla skin glazing does because it doesn't have like visible shimmer, but it does have like a sheen on it because it is the baked formula, and the baked formula rarely translates as a flat matte. But I have had this blush for very many years now, as you have heard, and I still really love using it. I still think this is one of the most unique colors in my collection, and I love the formula of the extra dimension everything that MAC has ever made. If you're ever interested in a beautiful baked formula from MAC, then go for the extra dimension. Here we have another blush that is relatively new to my collection, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because I just spoke about it in my monthly roundup and empties. This is the Armani Luminous Silk Blush in the shade 10, which is peach beige. It's a very pretty color, it's a very nice formula, and I think I'm really going to love this blush once I'm a little bit more fair, because now I've just gotten back from holiday a couple of weeks ago. I'm still sporting my summer tan, and honestly Armani has done such a good job describing the color that I don't feel like I need to add anything to it. It is a very nude peachy pink color. I think I'm going to appreciate it quite a bit in the winter months. Formula wise, this is actually, you know, a bit similar to the one from Dior. The one from Dior is maybe just like a hair more matte. I would qualify this more as like a satin matte because it has still a little bit of a sheen to it. It has beautiful finish on the skin. Honestly, I think I'm going to love this color because it's the kind of color that really goes with any type of look, but it really needs to be the time of the year when it just shows up a little bit better on me for me to really fully appreciate it. Here is a one-off that I actually think that I'm sadly going to have to declutter. So this blush, some of you will probably recognize it. This is a very old limited edition collection from MAC. It was part of the MAC Toledo collection, and the blush that was housed in here was a purple blush which had absolutely horrendous color payoff. And just the formula in here of the blush made me irrationally angry. The color didn't really fit my skin. So in the end I decided to basically like get rid of the powder in here and put a blush that I'm going to get more use out of. So what I did is I repressed one of the Makeup Geek blushes. I think this is the shade Romance, which as you can tell is very similar to the one from Nabla. But I think this one is just slightly peachier in tone. Well, actually they're like pretty similar to each other. It's basically your classic peachy pink, but I actually like the formula of this a little bit better because this Makeup Geek blush is rather old. The formula is really quite dated at this point, but I wanted to make use of the beautiful compact, so I wanted to put a color in here that I'm going to just reach for a little bit more. Now the problem is, if you guys are familiar with IKEA furniture, you will know that those Alex drawers will often have the issue that you can't really pull the drawer too far back, so this kind of like got lost in the back of the drawer, and now that I have pulled it out, unfortunately I can see that the actual like outer packaging doesn't seem all that pleasant looking anymore. It has gotten quite sticky. The white has become a little bit more yellow. So given that I don't really use the blush anymore inside, I did use it a couple of times and I quite enjoyed having this blush with this specific packaging, but unfortunately I haven't thought about it in years, and given that the formula of this is like quite dated for me at this point, it's like a very old school, you know, it's not a bad formula, there's just nothing special about it, and I have this shade of like blush 10 times over, or at least I have many of those like peachy, goldy duochrome type blushes. I just don't feel like I'm going to miss this one bit. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to get rid of this, and I will see what I will do with it. I will try to clean off the outer packaging a bit to see whether it will stop being so sticky or whether I just have to bin it, because unfortunately it just doesn't work at all. I have two blush palettes here that I wanted to talk to you about very briefly. So this is the Charlotte Tilbury, what is this called again? The Beautifying Face Palette in the shade Pillow Talk. And I'm beating myself up for not mentioning this during my monthly roundup and empties, because it took me too long after my holidays to film this video, and I totally forgot to include this in there, because I took this with me on holiday and I wanted to praise it, and I wanted to tell you how much I am enjoying everything that is in here. First and foremost, this is a baked formula, so it immediately has my heart, but it also is just my type of colors, you know. The highlighter is super pretty. These two are such nice colors. It's more of like a apricot peach, and this is, you know, the classic peachy pink gold duochrome. And surprisingly, I have even grown to like this shade, and that's one of the things that I love most about taking like one item of makeup with me on holiday and being forced to use it, that I have to get to know it, you know, and I have to force myself to make the best out of it. So I did use this shade quite a bit. Like the first time I used this palette on camera, I think I told you that I'm not really fond of this shade because it's really not my kind of color. But honestly, now that I've started using it, I actually appreciate this color as well. Let me swatch the blush shades that are in here. So you have these two, which are a bit more of like, just like an opaque kind of color. This one is more of like a reddish, so it's, you know, it's quite a deep red shade for someone of my skin tone. I think this palette is actually meant for people of a deeper skin tone than I am, but I was just super attracted to it. And here is like the peachy apricot shade. And then this one over here, depending on your skin tone, you will be able to use as a highlighter or as a blush topper, or, you know, just as a standalone blush because it looks beautiful. As you can tell, it is pretty much a spot on you for the Nabla shade. So they're both baked, they're both beautiful. I love them both. These are the kind of blushes that I get a lot of use out of, so I don't really mind having repetition. And like I said, I've discovered that this is the perfect blush palette to take with me. What I usually do with this palette is that I mix the two peachy shades together. So I will just dip my brush into both of these. Sometimes I'll go between these two or between these two, but overall this is just such a beautiful product. I actually quite like the packaging of this because it is quite hefty, it is beautiful, and I don't know whether you can see how it is a little bit like iridescent, just glorious. And not only the packaging is glorious, but the product in here, you have no idea how beautiful and flawless these look on the skin. Every single time I've put these on my skin, I always look at my cheeks and think, oh my gosh, do I really have such beautiful skin? No, it really must be something in these blushes that makes my skin look so beautiful. And what is also really impressive about this is that they last like a super long time on your cheeks. And my other blush palette is the Cartwheel from McGrath Labs. This is the Blushing Delights palette, which is part of the Bridgerton 2 collection, where we have 3 blushes, again in a gorgeous baked formula. Now the one from Nabla, for example, and from Charlotte Tilbury is more of like your classic baked gelée, where this is just your classic like domed baked formula. Just as impeccable though as the other. These are just so lightweight and so beautiful. Oh my gosh, my mom-in-law, when she was here a couple of weeks ago, she tried these blushes and she was like, what is this? I want it. So I had to like actually dig into Vinted to find her one of these, because obviously this limited edition, it's no longer available. But she fell in love with these blushes so much that she was begging me to go and find one of these for her. Luckily, I was able to find it and it's already waiting for her in a box here. Anyway, these are glorious. You get this stunning, like more plummy purple shade, which is beautiful for the fall and winter months. Then you have this really happy like pink, like warmer type of pink with a little bit of a gold sheen on it. And finally you have, you know, my favorite, the peachy pink gold duochrome. These are again a very lightweight, very flattering formula. They are quite punchy, and I do have to be careful when I apply them because all of them apply like really punchy from the start. A lot of these other formulas that are like the baked gelée, they are a little bit more harder pressed, so you are far less in danger of like over applying because you actually have to build them up a little bit more. But with these three, because the formula is so like lightweight and airy, they, you know, pick up quite a bit on the brush. At least mine do. But they all three are absolutely beautiful. This must be one of the few, if not the only, like truly more like pink blush that I have in my collection. I'm not really a pink blush gal. That's one of the things that you're going to find out throughout this video, because over the course of time I've discovered that pink just doesn't really match with my skin tone too well. So my preference really lies within like the peaches, the apricots, the pumpkin colors, the bronzy colors. You know, I have a specific color family when it comes to blush. And now let's start swatching things by brand. I've taken out here Suqqu, Becca and Gucci, and I think after that we've really only got the Pat McGrath blushes left. So let's start with my Suqqu blush collection. I have 4 blushes from them. 1 is in the pure color blush formula and 3 are in the melting powder formula, and I'm going to talk about them chronologically because I actually first bought the melting powder blushes. When these came out, they sort of like took everyone by surprise and they were just such an absolute hit. It's actually a real bummer that Suqqu will have to discontinue this formula because one of the ingredients to make these blushes is no longer available and they can't really keep making them, which is very unfortunate because this is probably one of the most exquisite like cream to powder formulas that you have ever come across on the market. So from the regular line I have these shades 08, which is this beautiful terracotta brownie color, the shade 05, which is one of the most unique orange colors you've ever seen because it has this like very strong yellow undertone to it, and one that is part of a limited edition collection, like the limited edition collection from summer of 2022, which is this shade. This is the shade 101. So let's quickly give them a swatch, starting off with the lighter colors and then moving on to the bright summer one. So these are the 3 shades that I have from Suqqu. This is 05, which is this gorgeous, very interesting orange with a very strong yellow undertone to it. Then we have this beautiful terracotta brownie red color, the shade 08, and finally we have the most beautiful vibrant tangerine color, which is the shade 101 from the summer collection from last year, which also has a little bit of a sparkle to it. I don't know whether that's coming across on camera, but the shade 101 also has like visible golden sparkle to it. The other ones do not. Like I said, they're a little bit of a cream to powder. They almost look like they're a putty if you look at the pan, but when you touch them, they are not like super spongy. Think of it like a ColourPop Super Shock eyeshadow. If you look at these, you will almost think that they feel like a Super Shock eyeshadow from ColourPop, but they're not. They remain, you know, they still have like sturdiness to them, but they feel very much like a cream to powder, and they apply and look on the skin like a cream to powder. They're extremely flattering, they're very buildable, they look very natural on the skin. Honestly, this is an impeccable formula. If you can still get your hands on one of these, I would highly recommend them because, as I said, eventually they will be out of stock and they will not be restocked. So now is your chance to get one of these because they are beautiful. And now, because I got all enthused about the melting powder formula and I had heard from people for years talking about the pure color blush formula, I also purchased this color. This is the shade 08, which is more or less like your classic peachy, orangey, pinky kind of color, but it has a bit of a gradation starting from like a deeper color and coming over here to this like light apricot color. Now, I like this blush all right, but frankly, it is not one of my favorites. It's a nice enough formula. Unfortunately, the part here that has like the really light shade has visible glitter to it that actually translates as glitter on the skin, and it really took me by surprise the first time I applied this blush, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Why do I have chunks of glitter on my face? It's because this part of the blush has actual like chunks of glitter, which is not my favorite. What I will usually do is like mix all the colors together and you do get this like very nice peachy apricot kind of color, which is definitely my speed when it comes to color. And the formula is nice enough, it's lightweight and everything, but this is just not my favorite. I just don't find it to be super special compared to a lot of the other blushes in my collection. I just don't find that it stands out, and it has honestly deterred me from like trying any more of these pure color blushes because I just don't find that the formula stands out. As much as I think the melting powder blushes are exquisite and a true, you know, standout, the pure color one is like the absolute opposite. I'm sorry, Claudia, I know you disagree with me, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, this is just okay. Okay, let's talk about the little UFOs here from Becca. These are a classic, these still stand the test of time, they're beautiful. I don't know whether they're still around. I know that Smashbox still offers some of Becca's products, but I'm not sure that the blushes are one of them. But I've kept these two. Yeah, I had a palette. I also had like a little holiday palette, but I gifted that to a friend, and I've kept these two single blushes, and I will continue to keep them because they're beautiful. The first one is this color here. This is the shade Wild Honey, which was popularized by the infamous Jaclyn Hill. And the other color that I have from them, the other color that I have from them is the shade Tiger Lily, which is the most beautiful, vibrant, like coral orange with a golden duochrome to it. As you can see, I have a type, but this is just, these two are so special. The shade Wild Honey is probably one of the most unique colors in my collection. The shade Tiger Lily certainly isn't very unique, but I do find that it has a very interesting and like unique undertone to it. So I actually really like it. So the shade Wild Honey, I'm pretty sure that on some people will almost translate into a bronzer shade because it is this beautiful like nudie, browny, slightly peachy leaning shade. Just stunning. This is in a matte formula, but like a very lightweight, very flattering type of formula, very much like the Dior blush, which is also matte but looks very flattering on the skin. And then we have the shade Tiger Lily, which is just so special to me because while a lot of my other corals lean very much into the pink undertones, this one actually leans into like a true tangerine color. And you can see that it's different from the one from Suqqu, which is also like a tangerine orange, because this one is more orange. This one still has a little bit of that like corally, reddy, pinky undertones to it, but it is also still very strongly orange. So I do find that this blush has an absolute unique spot in my collection. I love it, and I will never declutter it because it's just so special to me. Speaking of special, let's talk about the babies. I don't think it's especially if you've been around my channel for a little bit, it is no secret that I have turned into a super huge fan of these Gucci blushes. They're probably my current favorite like blush for like luxury blush formula. My absolute favorite is still to come, but these are my second favorite blush formula in my whole collection, even above the melting powder blushes from Suqqu. I love those, I think they're impeccable, but I just find the overall qualities of the Gucci blushes to be above the melting powder ones, because I think the packaging of these is so luxurious, so beautiful, so cute, but also the product in here is a very, very high quality. So I have 3 Gucci blushes. I've got the shades Rosy Beige, which started my love affair with these blushes, and I recently also purchased the shades Tender Apricot and the shade Soft Red, which is one of my current favorite summer blushes. So let's start off with the shade Rosy Beige, which started the love affair. So these are my 3 Gucci blushes. We've got Rosy Beige over here with its very unique undertones. Then we've got Tender Apricot, which I actually find to be also rather unique in its tones. And finally we have Soft Red, and probably I'm repeating myself right now as a broken record, but I find this blush to also have very unique undertones. So Rosy Beige is one of those like neutral mauve shades that just looks absolutely beautiful in the winter because it has that like cool toneness to it that looks beautiful. We think of something like the Divine Rose 1 palette from Pat McGrath. This is the perfect blush for that. Then we've got the shade Tender Apricot, which I bought because And here comes the story of when I found out that like peach leaning blushes are one of the most, you know, flattering shades of blush on me. I still remember clear as day the day when I first tried the shade Bliss from Makeup Geek. So Makeup Geek released like a whole line of blushes quite some years ago, and I purchased the shade Bliss, which was pretty much exactly this kind of shade. And up to that point, I think I had only owned the more classic like rosy red kind of blushes, and I had never really tried a blush that is in the like peachy orange spectrum of the family. And then I put this blush on and I was like, I had no idea that blush could look so great on me. I was head over heels with the color of that blush. So much so that it is to date the only blush that I've ever panned. Like, I literally went through the whole thing. I repurchased it. I never really went through the repurchased one, unfortunately, but this is the only blush ever in my life that I have like completely 100% panned. The shade Bliss from Makeup Geek, which was essentially the shade Tender Apricot from Gucci. So I'm really, really happy that I can have this blush back in my collection. It is the color that started my whole love affair with peach blushes, and this color just holds such a nostalgic place in my heart. And finally, the shade Soft Red, which I've spoken about on quite a few occasions recently, that I think is just such a unique, like, corally red blush, because unlike a lot of corals, it doesn't really have too much pink in it, it doesn't have too much orange in it, and I keep saying that it has like slightly chili pepper tones to it, and I don't really know why chili pepper is the association that I'm getting, but I look at this blush and I think of a chili pepper in like the best kind of way, and I absolutely love this blush. So in my opinion, these are not only stellar in terms of their packaging, in terms of the uniqueness of their colors, but they are also just such a beautiful formula on the skin. They're really lightweight, they have a little bit of that blurring quality to them. They're very similar actually to the Armani Luminous Silk in my opinion. I'm just hopelessly in love with these blushes, you guys. They just spark so much joy. Every time I pull out for one of these to use them, I get such a jolt of joy. And isn't that really the point of, you know, exercising your hobby? To experience that shot of endorphin. Every time I use this, I get an absolute massive shot of endorphins. And now let's talk about the blush to rule them all. If anyone was keeping count, this is the predominant blush formula in my collection. These are the Pat McGrath Divine blushes, and I absolutely love them. There is just something very unique about the formula of these blushes. They hold their own, and I can't really compare them in terms of formula to anything else that I have in my collection. But let me first show you which colors I currently own. So this is the lightest color in my collection. This is the shade Flirtatious, which is like a nudie pink. Then we've got one of the most universally flattering shades of blush that I have in my collection. This is the shade Nude Venus. Next we have my absolute favorite blush of all time. If you had to be, you know, this cruel and deprive me of the rest of my collection and made me choose only one blush to use for the rest of my life, I would without hesitation choose this blush. This is the shade Desert Orchid. And then we've got one of the happiest blushes that you've ever seen in your life. This is the shade Electric Bloom. And then we've got the shade Paradise Venus, which is a beautiful terracotta bronzy kind of color. Then I've got one of her duo blushes. This is the shade Paradise Glow. And finally, we have a limited edition blush from her holiday collection from last year. This is the shade Nude Venus 2. Aren't my babies an absolute sight to behold? I've arranged them here a little bit in like depth of color so that I can swatch everything in like a gradation from the lightest to the like sort of most vibrant color. So let's start off here with Flirtatious. So we've got Flirtatious, Desert Orchid, and Nude Venus. Flirtatious is going to have a really hard time showing up on me right now. It's not necessarily a blush that I use a lot in the summer. Then we've got my Queen, Desert Orchid, Nude Venus, Nude Venus 2, Paradise Venus, and finally we've got a bit of a mix of the shades that are present in Paradise Glow. And finally, let's watch the little watermelon color, Electric Bloom. So here we have all of my Pat McGrath blushes, starting with Flirtatious, Desert Orchid, Nude Venus, Nude Venus 2, Paradise Venus, Paradise Glow, and finally Electric Bloom. Now, Flirtatious is the kind of color that really only shows up on me when I'm at my fairest, because as you can see, it is also meant for very fair people. It is this very, very light nude mauve kind of color, very much reminiscent of Rosy Beige from Gucci, but lighter in tone. And I think a little bit more purple in tone. The other one is just slightly more plummy and more mauve. Then we have the queen of them all, Desert Orchid, which is this beautiful like bronzy orangey color with a little bit of pearl to it. Nude Venus is a beautiful classic peachy pink. Then we've got the shade Nude Venus 2, which I'm not really sure that is really coming across on camera very well, but you know, because it's called Nude Venus 2, it is actually quite similar to the shade Nude Venus, but it has a bit of this like cool toned pink shift to it, which makes it super interesting and super versatile. I think both of these like Nude Venus shades are very versatile. I consider Nude Venus to be the kind of blush that you can throw on with everything and it will look good on so many like different people with different like skin tones and undertones. And the shade Nude Venus 2 has this very interesting aspect to it, that because of this flip, because it is warm tone but it has that cooler toned overlay, it is very like versatile in terms of the looks that you can pair with it. The shade Paradise Venus is again meant for someone of a deeper skin tone than I am, but it is just this beautiful like bronzy ready terracotta shade. You will notice that the shade Paradise Glow is very similar to this, and that's because if you look at the little duo here, as it turned out, and that was not information that was unfortunately announced when I was purchasing this blush, is that this part of the blush is indeed Paradise Venus. I don't think this is the shade Desert Orchid. A lot of people have been saying that this is Desert Orchid. It is not. So unfortunately, this blush is a little bit redundant in my collection, but because I can mix the two colors together and get a somewhat more like unique type of shade, I don't really mind it too much. Like if you put too much of the Paradise Venus part of the blush, you are going to get a shade that's very similar to actual Paradise Venus, but if you mix them a little bit more in like a 50-50 ratio, you are going to get a slightly different shade. And then finally we have this beautiful happy watermelon kind of color. This is the shade Electric Bloom, which I absolutely love because even though it is so vibrant, you can build it up and it looks just so flattering and so lively, and it immediately livens up your complexion. The reason that I adore this formula so much is because it is just very unique in my experience. A lot of the other blushes that I talked about, the Gucci, the Armani, the Dior one, there is a little bit of like a lightweightedness to the powder. Not in a bad way, just in a different way. Whereas these powders, they feel denser and more substantial, but at the same time they're buildable, they're flattering on the skin, and these blushes last forever and ever. When you put this on your skin at 8 in the morning, at 8 in the evening, it's still going to be there. Okay, my friends, my battery is letting me know that it is completely out of life, so I need to charge it. This was basically the end of this video because we have now swatched all of my powder blushes that I currently have in my collection. I would love to know what is your current favorite blush formula in your collection. What is the brand that you have the most blushes from and why? I'm very nosy like that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you very soon. Bye!